wishing still hated one, lived a king and his beautiful daughters. The youngest was the most beautiful of all, such that even the sun was amazed at her beauty whenever his light touched her face, despite all it had seen. Near the king's castle was a forest, and in the forest was a tree, and under the tree was a well. The young daughter would play at the side of the well, on hot days, closing a little golden ball into the air. Above all else, the princess loved playing with her ball. Now one day it so happened that the ball missed her hand, instead splashing into the well. It sunk deep into the cool waters, and though the princess tried her best to retrieve it, the well was too deep, and her efforts were in vain. And so she cried and cried and cried, till she heard a voice. "Princess, why are you crying? Your tears could make even the stones pity you." She looked about and spotted a frog at the side of the well. "Why, you old frog, I am crying because my little golden bell has dropped in the well." "Be quiet," said the frog. "I shall help you. But what would you offer in return?" "Anything," replied the princess. "My dresses, my jewels, even the very crown on my head." "I do not want any of that," responded the frog. "Instead, love me, let me be your companion. Eat from your plate, drink from your cup, and sleep in your bed. Promise me this, and I shall fetch your ball." "Yes, I'll promise you anything as long as you will only bring back my ball," cried the princess. But she thought to herself that a frog could never be companion to a princess, and so planned to abandon him. The frog dove into the well and retrieved the ball as soon as the promise left her lips, and so he returned and threw the ball into the grass at her feet. The princess was filled with joy and instantly plucked the golden orb from the ground, ran off home. The frog called after her, but it was no use. She soon forgot about the frog, and the next day sat down to eat with the king and court. When he finished eating from a little golden plate, there came a noise. Splish, splosh, splish, splosh, splish, splosh, all the way to the door. After knocking, a voice called out to the princess to let it in. She ran over and began to greet the visitor, turned pale with fear, and slamming the door, she ran back to the table. The king saw his daughter's fear and asked, "Dear child, what has frightened you so? Is there perhaps a giant here to steal you away?" "No," she said, "not a giant, a terrible, slimy frog." "What does this frog desire?" She recounted the story of the ball falling in the well, and how the frog had saved her toy in exchange for her promise. The king commanded her to let the frog and the frogs, as she should keep her promise. She did so, but again resisted when the frog asked to be sat beside her, to eat off her little golden plate, and to be carried upstairs to her bed. The king, her father, commanded her to fill each of the frog's requests, though she was clearly uncomfortable. She carried the frog upstairs between two fingers, crying, for she hated the feel of his cold slime beneath her fingers, and dreaded sleeping with him in her bed. So she set him in a corner, but he threatened to tell her father should she not place him in her bed. The princess indeed picked him up, but threw him against the wall in her anger. To her surprise, however, when hitting the ground, the frog transformed. He was no longer a nasty amphibian, but now a prince. His eyes were kind, and his countenance beautiful. As such, she complied with her father's wishes, and kept him as a companion. He recounted a tale to her, describing how an evil witch had cast a curse upon him, trapping him as a frog. Now she was the only one who could have saved him. In the morning, a coach came to fetch them. It was beautiful, with 8 horses adorned with gold. losing him to the curse, Henry was so distressed that he had iron bands placed around his heart to keep it from bursting in two. But upon seeing his prince again, Iron Henry was so filled with joy, the bands began to crack. 3 times the prince heard it, crack, 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 and asked his faithful servant whether something was the matter. But each time he simply responded with joy at his safe return.